how did things wrap up at COP28?
Yeah, thanks for having me again, Kate. So the COP28, when it wrapped up, it was quite a dramatic ending. All of a sudden, everything happened very quickly. We did go over time, as was expected. We were about, 28 hours over time. So what happens generally is you have like a closing plenary or like a closing ceremony. And normally, like the large decision is, like decided on right at the end. So it'll be like a whole build up. Last year in Sharm el Sheikh, it was like 6 hours of countries talking, and then right at the end, it was like, okay, we're going to adopt this. This year it was very different. He adopted it, like he, used the thing to say that it was adopted like within 2, 3, 4 minutes of the plenary starting, which was really, really surprising. Nobody really expected it. So what happened was the new text was sent out to parties at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 10:30 we were in the plenary, and that was very unexpected.
And so what were the highlights of it, Amelia, in terms of the commitments or where we actually got to in COP28?
Yeah, so it was, I think what happened was the original draft, or the second draft, which was released a few days ago, was very, very disappointing, and countries were very angry on it. And so obviously we're youth, and just everyone in general was quite disappointed. And so what that allowed them to do was to, improve it a little bit, and it made it look a lot better. So we did end up having fossil fuels written in the text, which was a massive win. We were very, very concerned that that wouldn't even happen at all. It doesn't say full fossil fuel phase out, which was, what a lot of countries were asking for. But we obviously, had to reach some sort of consensus in the whole process. So it just says to accelerate action towards like moving away from fossil fuels, and also acknowledge the role that transitional, fuels play in the process. So there were a few highlights in the sense that we actually got something about fossil fuels in there. But it meant that there were compromises made on other things. So like there was less language on human rights, there was less language on like the impacts on children and youth and women and, Indigenous people. So there were quite a few compromises that had to be made in the process just to get fossil fuels written in there overall. That was really the only positive of it. Everyone's quite disappointed by the outcome, really.
Right, okay. I mean, it did include a commitment to tripling renewable energy capacity and doubling energy efficiency. So I guess there are some good bits. I mean, having now seen up close how these international negotiations have, it seems slow and cumbersome, but how significant is it to actually get that reference to fossil fuels included in the text that has this level of agreement across the world?
Yeah, it is quite a significant step forward. As I said, we weren't really expecting it to happen after the previous draft. So in that sense, everyone was quite relieved. And as you said, there are, some other significant commitments within the text. There's also things on doubling the amount of money going towards adaptation resources, and all things like that. So there are some positives. I think it's, a step in the right direction. What most people are saying is it's better than the previous draft, and that's all that matters. And all the countries, they adopted it, they all agreed to it. And so that's, allowing for some sort of significant step forward for next year's COP in Azerbaijan to, be able to figure out, the more ins and outs of what's actually a good thing for the planet and what's instead going to, impede on our future.
Okay, so some progress. And Amelia, what's it been like being at COP, just briefly, as a young person being there in the middle of the action? What are your reflections?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really excellent opportunity, not only to, get to sit inside negotiation rooms with, all of these negotiators and, ministers and heads of states, and being able to listen into how, how it actually functions. I don't think you quite realize how much is going on behind the scenes. I mean, you're sitting there for, they're sitting negotiating for days on end. You've got the first week, which are one set of negotiations. You've gone to the second week, and it's a completely different set of negotiations. And so as a young person, I found it really interesting, just to learn a bit more about the process. This year's COP was quite different because there were a lot of side events and a lot of pavilions. And so, as young people, we generally spent most of our time in the background, in side events, discussing the ins and outs of absolutely everything and talking about how important everything, how important progress is. I think overall it was a very hectic 2.5 weeks. I don't think, people who, most people who aren't able to attend these negotiations I think just realize, I think it's more generally a thought of, wow, okay, they're deciding on the future in this conference, which goes for 2 weeks. It must be, quite a straightforward process. But once you're actually there, you realize, okay, it takes a lot more effort to find any sort of consensus, to find any sort of agreement than I would have expected. Yeah.
Well, that's really good to hear. It's been really inspiring to talk to you while you've been at COP28. And I think I speak to so many young people who are saying, what can we actually do to contribute to greater climate change action? And it's been fantastic hearing from you, and I'm sure you'll go far. We're very proud of you as a Perth export, and look forward to seeing, your path forward from here. So thanks very much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, all the best, Amelia.
Thank you. Bye.